Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Chi Johnson, and I am a brand and communications manager here at Intellum. Our team of award-winning customer education professionals help the largest, fastest moving brands in the world successfully educate their customers, partners, and employees. We are the disruptors, the innovators, the creators, and the doers. And for over 22 years now, we have been observing and rethinking how people learn and collaborate. I know I use a lot of very trendy terms that most companies, specifically SaaS, use to describe themselves. But if you want to learn exactly like why we use those words and how true they are, I implore you to go check out our website and our background and how the things that we've done over the years, because it is truly remarkable and I'm honored to be a part of this team. Now, why are we here? Customer education is a practical solution to a lot of issues that organizations face with retention and revenue and achieving the most crucial business outcomes. Oftentimes, customer education can feel complicated, but Intellum is here to help. This webinar series, Underscore, is my first child and is our way of providing more insight into what customer education is and can be. We prop up our experts and our customers and our partners to share their knowledge and practical advice right here inside of the Intellum platform. Today, we are presenting impactful user experience, aka UX, for customer education. Building an education experience that achieves business goals and delivers meaningful value to your learner is really hard. So today, we're taking an inside look into what it takes to define a user journey and personalize how your audience is engaged with your organizational education initiative. Lots of words there. So what I want to do is I want to start by going over the Intellum methodology. This is the basis for all of the things Intellum, our platform, how we advise our customers, how we advise you, even if you're not a customer, on how to approach the customer education program and building and delivering that. So as you can see, this is our methodology. It winds down a apparently linear process, but it's not linear. It's actually cyclical, because once you get to the application, then comes measurement, and then going right back to the top of the line where it's business goals to make sure that all of the things you built and are delivering are actually achieving business goals. So it is a reiterative process. So where are we today? What is today's conversation? Where is wanting to provide some context? Where in the methodology are we speaking? We're talking about delivery strategy. And so UX is a very important part of your delivery strategy. So with that being said, I'm not going to drum along anymore. I'm going to introduce our featured speaker today. As you can see, her gorgeous face here, Katie Deninger, she's been integral to the Intellum team for a very long time. She is armed with an MBA and a background in graphic design. She has served in multiple departments and pretty much run the gamut when it comes to both in-person and virtual events, and all of the things in between. Katie unleashed a new level of magic during the creation and implementation of our virtual event offering, and that's really where we got to see her UX magic flow and really come to life. And so she is now heading up our UX team as UX strategist and manager of technical services. So Katie channels her creative and strategic way of thinking for each and every one of our clients on the Intellum platform. And I don't want to talk any longer. We'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. We'll be joined by a customer to do a cool little Q&A section. So feel free to start dropping your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll tackle them a little later. Katie, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I think I might just take that little snippet of the recording and just start each day with that, because that was excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Most of you guys on here are probably admin of a platform, and being an admin is hard. It can be a really hard job because you are fielding so many different things, possibly from different departments, of trying to generate content, get users into the platform. You're working towards those business goals that you have set forth. And so a lot of times when you're dealing with all of that, the user experience tends to take a little, hit the back burner a little bit. And so that's not really anybody's fault. It happens. It happens to a lot of our clients, and that's okay, because that's where we come in to help you guys get that user experience that'll actually end up impacting all of those metrics that you have set forth. So one of the things we like to do with that is really build a strong foundation. And so when you're adminning a tool and you're dealing with all these different issues coming your way, there's a lot of one-offs. And so you become almost like tunnel vision on an issue. And so it's okay, like we need to generate content for this and these users. We make it, we stick it in the platform. Maybe we display it here or there, like good, on to the next thing. And so when that happens, it ends up being a lot of tape and glue of putting something together, like this lovely house that I don't know where you found that picture, but it's excellent. And we often forget to take a step back and look at the experience as a whole, because you stood up the site and you're just adding. And every now and again, you do need to take that moment to be like, okay, I'm a net new user. What is this like for me? How am I finding what I'm looking for? Am I getting to the content I need? And so a lot of times our clients will find out that, oh yeah, I haven't done that in a minute, and it's a little rough in there. And so we like to make a platform that is scalable. And so because of that, because we started to see that occurring more and more, we actually began to make UX a part of our implementation process for that very specific reason, is so that when you're standing up your platform, you are working with an Intellum implementation consultant and a UX strategist that is really laying a foundation for your site that you can grow and build from. And for our clients that are, already existing with us, we do what is called a UX refresh, which is where myself or one of our other UX strategists comes in and we help top to bottom restructure the entire site. And as I tell Nick and several other people that you guys will meet along the road, I love working with them. I love doing UX refreshes. They're so much fun. But I don't want you to have to come back to me in 6 months or a year. I want this to be something where we can lay out a plan, we can lay out a strategy, and you continue to grow and build from there and just be on your own. So I look at UX in really two pillars, which is appropriate for the visuals here. Simplification and visual organization. So with simplification, a lot of times, if you have an LMS that is geared towards a software, we have a lot of terminology and things like that become second nature to us. But if you think about it as a net new user coming in, a lot of that might be new to them and they might not understand what it means. And so I always say, like, I designed a UX experience for my mom because God love her. She's very smart, she's a sweet woman, but she's not the most technically savvy. And so I like to make it so that they can log in and they know where to go. It's not something where they're having to dig around or search here or there. Like, information that is pertinent to them is presented up front, right in their face. They know where to go, no questions. The other piece of it, coming back to that terminology, I myself I'm losing my words, but I have done it myself where I'm talking to someone and I'm like, oh, we'll create these great banner images and I'll go here and there. And everyone's like, that sounds fantastic. What is a banner image? And I'm like, right, that is a term specific to our platform. Got it. Let me explain. And so that's something to think about when you're setting stuff up, or if you're using abbreviations for things. You want to make sure that it still is understandable from your user's perspective. And so it says here, they need to know where they're going, what they're learning, and what they're going to get from that learning. So if it's a certification, if it's troubleshooting, things like that, all become a really important factor into that user experience for them. The other piece of the puzzle is that visual organization. The visual piece of the platform and things like that can sometimes take a back burner as well. If it's, I got to focus on the content, I got to get the right content in there. But those visuals play a big effect on your learners as well. But we'll dig into that piece a little bit later on. So simplification. What we really want to talk about here, your homepage. Your user logs in and it is the first thing they see. And so when they log in, they should see something that is goal oriented. That is the first thing I talk about with a lot of our clients when we're going through either an implementation or UX refresh, is that your homepage should be goal oriented. Now, there's two parts to that. The first part is goal oriented towards the user. When I'm logging in, I have certain things I want to achieve. I have certain maybe certifications I need to get, things like that. And I don't want to have to click until I get to where I need to go. So that level of personalization is really important to the learners. So if someone like Chi is logging in, she's in marketing, she may be on a leadership track, all of these great, the system should identify that about her and show her that content that's relevant. she probably is not as interested, and I don't mean to speak for you, Chi, but she maybe isn't as interested in the nitty gritty engineering aspects or those sorts of trainings. If you are, good for you. But we want to present things that actually matter to them so they don't have to sift through all the noise. The second part to goal oriented is the goals of your business. And so I always like to break up the homepage as like thinking about it as above the fold or above the 50% mark should be goal oriented for the user. And below should be what are the business objectives? So is there a certification you're really trying to drive enrollment for? Is there content that you are seeing solve a lot of questions that maybe are like tickets coming through from your clients? So that's where you can start to add in those business goals. But aside from that, we have something called the topics page, which is where you should think of as like the discovery zone. So that's where users can go and engage in different content. And if we keep going with that Chi example, and I'm sorry, Chi, I didn't plan on using you as my example, but let's say Chi actually is interested in engineering. There are certain things and features that you can use within the Intellum platform that can, again, she can build her own homepage. So things like maybe she's going to follow a topic on engineering and that's something new. And then the system learns that about her and can present additional information as well. So those are, really key factors, and making those two pages different is very important in that user experience, because you want them to feel that the information is easily accessible and there is enough information there, but you don't want it to be difficult. Because the difference with customers and other learners is that they're not being forced to be there. No one is requiring them to be there. So it needs to be something that is smooth and fluid and very easy to use so that you can capture their attention and get them where they need to go. So this is something I've long debated with some of my other colleagues at Intellum, which is if content is king, then I believe artwork is queen, because content 1000% is important. 100%. Like that is what people are there to consume. But if you can't get them in the door, then the content's just sitting there. So you have to create some visual appeal to your user experience to really get them into that content and start consuming that knowledge. There's a couple different ways we can achieve this. What I always to do from a graphic design perspective, the artwork that lives on the platform, a lot of times people will be like, oh, you know what? I can just throw some stock photography in there. I got to write this content. It'll be good enough, which sure, you can do that, but you're missing out on some key opportunities here by just plugging in generic stock photos, which I'm not throwing any shade at anybody who does. I get it. We all are busy, but there are a lot of opportunities with the artwork within the platform, such as colors, images, and iconography, because what you can do with those you can give the learner information without them really having to read and dig into it. So if you think about it from the colors angle, you can associate a color with a type of product. So for example, our content authoring tool is Evolve. A lot of times you see the color purple associated with Evolve. So as a learner, if I'm scrolling through the site and I'm looking at, there's all this text, but I see purple, I'm like, oh, I bet you that's an Evolve course. I love Evolve. Let me click in and learn what are some new feature updates and things like that. So it's just a way of grabbing that user's attention, adding a level of organization. And the same goes for iconography. We've done it recently with one of our clients, restructuring their artwork of they had color coded according to product. And then on top of that, we use iconography to display what type of content it was. Is it a certification? Is it a knowledge-based article? Is it a video? There's certain elements like that. So I know what I'm getting into. Because if I see an award on it, I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to consume some knowledge and then be tested on it. And I'll get a reward for that. So it's a nice way to lead them, into the content prepared for what it's going to look like as an experience for them. And another key part of this is consistency. You want to make sure that if you're going to go down that route, that you keep it that consistently throughout the site. So wherever they see something that's evolved, whether it's a topic or an activity artwork, it has that same color associated with it. I do come from a graphic design and marketing background, and so brand is always a big deal. And so when your user logs into your LMS, they shouldn't question what company it is that they're looking at. They should know it's your brand without having to read a single word, look at a logo. anything like that. They know because there's that cohesiveness from website to LMS to billboard, whatever. It's the right imagery for your brand. And so even recently with Twitter, we recently did a UX refresh with them, which hopefully you'll get to meet Nick at the end of this. They used their own photography and added some unique Twitter elements to it that were very subtle. But when you look at it, and if you look at the Twitter website, there's no question who it's tied to. It's 100% tied to that brand. And so that way you get that additional level of clarification, and it also makes your users feel more secure. It's a little bit of a subconscious realization for them that knowing like, okay, I know this look and feel, it's familiar to me, I'm in the right place, I trust that this content, what I'm consuming is accurate. It is a security aspect to that for your users as well. So like we said before, you can't force your customers to come in there. So you really want to entice them in and make it an enjoyable experience. So it was something very early on in my career at Intellum. I remember just sitting on a demo with one of our sales reps and just being like, learning doesn't have to suck. And it really doesn't. This can be a fun experience. It can be simple. You want to feel that it's like going to a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant and you sit down and they give you this novel of a menu, it's overwhelming. You don't know where to go. It's so much. But imagine if you sat down and someone had already curated a menu for you that was everything that they knew you would like or that they knew you would be interested in. You could pick from there. Because it's not, when it comes to a user experience, it's not about how much, but it's more about what is relevant to me and what is important to your users. And so don't overload your homepage. Don't put just to show off like, hey, we've got a ton of content. You really want to streamline it and add that level of personalization. And the same thing goes with that visual organization as well. A lot of times people will be like, oh, let me put the title of the activity on the artwork. And it's put the titles right underneath it. And then it becomes a little bit cluttered and a little bit busy. So you really just want to keep it simple and organized, and you guys will be doing great.
That was amazing. A couple people in the comments said this is gold. Seriously, that was a really great presentation. And I want to continue the learning. We have our awesome friend, Nick Fabiano, here with us. Nick is with Twitter. Nick, if you'd love to take a second and introduce yourself and what you do. I have a few questions. I want to just ask you about your experience with your UX and the recent refresh that you went through. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm Nick Fabiano. I am the project and platform manager for Twitter Flight School, which is our educational arm for a lot of our advertisers and hopefully even creators and average users.
Excellent. So I want to start with, and you work very closely with Katie. As she said in the very beginning, our goal is she loves talking to you guys. We love working with you. But if Katie has done her job right, she don't want to talk to you that often. So I want to talk about when we started the UX refresh. So what led you all to a UX refresh period? And then what were some of the indicators you saw that showed you needed one?
Sure. So we were looking at our UX and we had realized that, wow, this is confusing, a little bit ugly. And we figured out that a lot of users were having some trouble navigating to the critical points on our site and were very confused as to how to earn certain badges and why they weren't getting badged. And we just figured that we needed to reorganize and sort of reskin our entire UX to make it the best experience possible.
I do want to add like a little thing I forgot to mention earlier. Our underscore session last month was about architecting your content for customer education. And so it's part one to this conversation and part two is the UX. And so our guest speaker, Joe King, just for all of you attendees that know, he actually, his agency Construct worked hand in hand with Nick and Twitter Flight School. So he alluded, because it was not yet live, he alluded during that conversation some of the approaches he took for that. So if you're looking for some more context on this, I highly recommend you go back and watch that webinar. But I didn't want to say that because he mentioned just some of the visual cues and just like the thought process on why you guys wanted to do a refresh too. So I wanted to add that context. So thank you. The next question I have is,
and real quick, I think part of it too, when Nick and I were initially looking at together, there was so much great content and important content. Like you said, like even looking at the topics page, you know, it was more of a like trying to cover all your bases. And what we did was we streamlined it to be very simple of earn a badge, courses by role, and hashtag what's happening, which is basically like the knowledge base and stuff like that. And it really just gave a much clearer direction for like where users can go and like what they want to achieve. And I think I don't want to speak for Nick, but from an admin side, I think it'll be a lot easier for you guys to manage as well, as far as like, where do I put my content? That's another piece of it too. When you design the UX experience, you want to also have almost like a diagram for your content of like, okay, I'm creating a new piece of content. Is it knowledge base? Is it this? Is it an article? Is it a video? Like having this, like, where does it need to go? How does it fit into your UX experience? Now, if it doesn't fit into any of them, then I think you need to have a conversation of, is this content a fit, or do we need to make an improvement to the experience?
Going right back to that content strategy piece there. So my next question, Nick, is will you share some insight into the reality of the refresh, like in just the user experience design versus how you expected it would go?
Sure, absolutely. So at first, we really had no idea how it was going to look. And we actually brought in our studio team to provide some mock-ups that would then inform sort of this UX refresh. And we actually ended up going in a completely different and arguably better direction, honestly, because it looked, once it was actually in staging and we were about ready to launch, we all thought to ourselves, wow, this looks incredible. We cannot wait to unveil this to our entire user base. And Katie was extremely helpful along the way. We were probably not the easiest client in terms of making these last minute changes, but Katie was amazing in terms of just making those and also making recommendations where she would say, maybe I would put this here. And then we would go, oh, that's definitely the right way to go. So I would say that it blew our expectations out of the water, honestly.
So
I think it was about a week before that we were like, you know what, this looks so great. Can we do it in all 9 locales?
Yeah.
And thankfully, you guys do have a really great studio team with Burgess over there, and they knocked out all the translations for the artwork and stuff like that. And it does look great. Yeah.
That is quite the challenge to overcome. And it's actually a good segue to my next question, because you mentioned in staging and your individual use case is going to be way different than someone else's, right? Yours was an existing program. It had an existing, like you didn't want to take it down in order to refresh it. So you had it in staging. I want to ask you, could you share the biggest challenge in doing a refresh, like with an existing program and having it as a live site at the same time? Like, how did you overcome that challenge, or if it was a challenge?
So I would say one of our biggest challenges was honestly internally agreeing on a structure. I know we spent a lot of time on that. And then once we actually had it in place, Katie was great about really making sure that it was very clear for everybody how it would actually look and function on the site. But yeah, the biggest challenge was actually organizing all of our content on the back end and how it would present itself. We knew how it would look on the front end, but of course, the core of the experience is the actual content and the navigation, and making sure that all of our users are getting to where they need to go in 3 clicks or less, essentially, is what we aimed for.
Ooh, 3 clicks or less.
Yeah. I think there's a pros and cons to like both sides of it. If you're working with an existing site, the puzzle pieces you have in front of you, there might be a lot of puzzle pieces to figure out where they go and how they all fit together. And with a brand new site, you're painting the art of the possible. So many things that you have to make fit together. But again, there's a lot that you have to anticipate and almost kind of predict ahead of time.
Very true. So with that, knowing what you know now, what is something that you would do differently with your UX back when you originally launched? And I don't know if you were a part of the Twitter team when Flight School was launched, but what is something you would do differently in your past iteration of this?
So I wasn't here when we initially launched, but I will tell you one thing first and foremost, a much, much smaller hero image at the very top to bring everything above the fold. That was one of the first things that we had flagged to ourselves. We said about a third of the page is our masthead image, and its users might even just click off the site because they don't want to scroll all the way down to go to the content that's relevant to them. And I would say another thing that I would do if I was initially launching based on what I know now would be more action-oriented categories, right? Grow your business, earn a badge, things like that.
So more so in the language or in the content?
In the language itself.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think the hero image brings up a good point too. And it was branded, it was well done, but that's a large piece of real estate. And a lot of times people are like, okay, let me just put my logo, it looks good, I put it up there, check the box, on to the next thing. But that's again kind of like a missed opportunity, because those hero images can link to anything inside or outside the platform. So that's a CTA, that's a call to action right there that you can really get some engagement out of your users. And I don't remember how long ago it was that we introduced the carousel option where it'll rotate different images. You can add group restrictions to them. So it's visible to like maybe for Twitter, like specific agencies can see specific hero images and stuff like that. But it's again, that's top full width. That's an important piece of the puzzle to really consider. And again, yeah, you don't want it taking up the whole page. We trimmed it down. It looks excellent now.
Yes, it is in a much better place.
If you haven't checked it out, please go check out Twitter Flight School, not just so that you can see how great of a job we did, so you can see how great of a job it is and how great of an education program it is. We do have some questions coming in, so feel free to drop those in the chat or drop them in the Q&A panel. But the first question I have, is there any before and after shots available? We did not know if we could or allowed to share them. So we did not share them, but can we share some before and after shots?
Sure, I don't see why not. I have them available because this was such a large project that I presented this to our entire GBM organization. So I put a bit of a deck together, so I could definitely share some of that out.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. Okay, so do you want to share that later? You're going to share it, send it after you?
Yeah, I can share it. Katie, I can send it over to you, and then we can distribute to the proper people.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll link it in our recap. We send our recap on Mondays, so we will absolutely put that available with that so you can link out and see it. Mm-hmm. Our next question is, do you have any guidance, templates, resources, etc., for mapping the UX of a customer education site? We're just getting started and want to outline a clear structure before jumping in. That is an amazing question.
So that is actually something, it's not necessarily a template, but basically like when we're going through an implementation with a new client, before they even get to the UX, my homework I always send them off with is I want to just lay that initial foundation. I want you guys to start thinking about your content into 3 buckets. And again, it's very similar to what I just talked to you about with Twitter, but just different terminology. And again, you can craft the terminology to fit your brand. But essentially think about it as knowledge base, certifications. Those are very simple buckets to start with. Like you want to lay that foundation. You want to give everybody a starting point to start like thinking from, okay, yeah, I'll do a layer of certifications, but then I'll break the certifications down by level 1, level 2, level 3, or marketing, sales, whatever. I'm just making stuff up now. But it's a great way to those are very simple, digestible topics to really go with. And from there, you can start to branch out and start to think about what type of groups fit this bucket and this and that. And that's the next piece, is thinking about your users and their personas. That's a big piece of the journey, is who is coming to your site and crafting out, here's persona A. This is an agency person. They are looking to consume this type of content. And again, with the Intellum platform, our groups are not a one-to-one. I, as an individual, can be a part of multiple groups, in which really helps refine that personalization. So those 2 are really the initial foundation that you want to lay with that user experience.
I feel like I always end up mentioning this in every underscore, but a really great way to understand those learner personas and really understanding the goals for your learner and your program is to start with the Intellum framework. And that really, it serves as a baseline guide that you can then use to go through the key principles that you can use when applying the principles that Katie outlined today. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and share our key takeaways, because that could really serve as a sort of guide. But the pillars for good UX are going to be that simplification and visual organization. And the key principles for each of those are personalization and intuitiveness for the simplification, and then consistency and cohesion for the visual organization. Those are the principles you're going to want to keep top of mind for each part of the process. And I think when you have gone through the Intellum framework and you understand what goals you have, you understand your learner goals and your business goals, that helps inform every other stage of building your program. So I think that's a really great place to start. That is, I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it again, it's product agnostic. So whether you use the Intellum platform or you use a competitor or you use something else, whatever it is that you're using, you can apply that map that you'll get after completing the course to any program, to your program for any platform you're delivering it on.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, taking it back, that step 1, which I jumped over, it went to step 2, that step one should definitely be identifying what's the goal. We've seen people come in, they're like, I need to stand up an LMS. Here's an LMS, check the box, I did it. And it's just, but it can be so much more. And so it's like really identifying what the goals are, what you're trying to achieve. That's your guiding light through the whole process, and making sure it always comes back to that and comes back to a purpose.
Great. This question from Danny. Welcome back, Danny. So glad to see you here. I think actually I'd love to get some of your input on as well, Nick. It's what does the process look like, or what are the struggles of performing UX design when collaborating with content authors or learning experience designers? So that cross-team collaboration is probably what we're going to talk through here.
Okay. I would just say managing, first of all, I would say if you have data available, certainly use it, because you have a more informed decision that everybody can agree on just objectively. I would say that one of the issues that we dealt with is just, and this had to do with the ambiguity as well and the lack of data, was that everybody had a different idea of what they thought would work. And what we had done, we sort of combined all of the approaches that our team had thought about, and then we made the decision to, okay, we will do this, we will see what the results are, and then we'll iterate further on it. So I would say that the biggest challenge was actually agreeing on a direction and then making the decision to make data-informed decisions later on and then changing it as such.
Data-informed decision seems to be the key to every stage of building a customer education, really. Yeah. So that was really great, because we talk about that when we're talking about evaluating its effectiveness. It's using the data to inform that when you're evaluating like literally every stage of the customer education process. I think, thank you for that question, Danny. That was great. And thank you for that feedback. Katie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think too, doing like the UX refreshes with a lot of our clients has enabled us the opportunity to we take before and after screenshots, of course, which we'll send, but we also get that before and after data. And so Twitter Flight School, I believe, launched maybe 2 weeks ago. So we don't have the after data for it yet, but it's important to measure. So we, with Twitter, sent out a survey, sorry, work from home struggle, but we sent out a survey to all users to gauge their experience, how they would rate the site, things like that. And then you don't want to send it out right away, because you want to make sure users have had enough time to really experience the new and improved. And then you measure it again and you can compare. Now, that's one approach. Some people take a different approach, whereas if they have key stakeholders, they like to do a smaller focus group and they really hone in on those stakeholders or those super users and stuff like that to really get that firsthand insight. Because I think for a lot of us as admin or Intellumites, I don't know what we're called, we're almost too close to it, that sometimes you need that fresh perspective. You need that person who is actually like on the front lines using the tool to really give you that insight of, it's just, yeah, this is what I'm trying to find and I can't find it. Like, how can we make that easier? And if you see that common trend throughout enough users, it's, okay, this is something we need to address that maybe we didn't think about.
Very fair. So I think I would love, if you guys have more questions, we'll keep them rolling. But I did want to dive into a lot of times we will tackle topics that are pretty universal to applying to building or refreshing or reworking or delivering an education program. But we have created an opportunity for people to dive deeper and to really get into the nitty-gritty of their particular industry. And so I did want to mention our roundtables, because it's a great way to take what you're learning here. For example, how this would translate. You have now understood or learning how to approach a UX refresh for customer education, or building your user experience to make sure that it's really delivering on the goals you have set for a customer education program. But how does that translate to someone in manufacturing? Or how does that translate to someone in higher ed? We have created roundtables in order for you to dive in deeper with your peers who are also trying to do the same thing. So I'm just going to drop a link for those here, so that you can find one that might apply to you. We release those for each month. We'll do those every now and then. So not every now and then. We have them almost weekly. We release the new roundtable topics as far as what each roundtable are geared toward. Every few weeks we'll refresh that. So make sure you're checking back for that. But we have another question here. Do you have some sample survey questions you'd recommend asking the general customer base of learners using a site? Oh, that's a great question.
I can sort of elaborate on that, just based off what we had sent out. So We did do some of those 1 to 5 questions, but also we really wanted to get a full scope of how people were feeling, not just quantitatively, but also qualitatively. So we did ask, what would you change if you could change anything about our content? What would you do if you can change anything about our organization of content? So we really got a lot of input from our users that's very candid. It's not just a number, it's also how they're feeling about the platform. And then we had sort of an amalgamation of all of that feedback. We found all the common threads throughout all the responses, and then we chose to action those specific items.
Great. Marianne, did that answer? I feel like it's a great example of those questions. You're very welcome. Great. She said, thanks. So y'all hit the nail on the head with that one. So again, if you have more questions, keep them rolling in. I'm just going to keep rolling through our next set of action items. The next action item I have is to follow us on LinkedIn, just so that you can see what's coming up next and really stay in touch with and meet the other people who are talking about customer education. We do like to share our customer stories there very frequently. It allows us to tag the Nick Fabianos of our world and say, hey, thanks for working with us. And hey, general public, check out what we've got going on. And that's where we release our blogs and things like that as well. So I'm really glad that we had this conversation today. I feel like it's really necessary. People are scared of the UX. I feel like they're going in blind. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken away from this is go in with a plan and go in willing to really address your learners' needs and make sure that your learners' needs are being met and also your business goals are also being met there. So follow us on LinkedIn for more information on that. Any final thoughts, like before I get to my very last slide?
I think an important thing to remember when you're trying to look at a user experience, like, yes, identify personas, create content and create visuals with a purpose, but also remember that you yourself are a learner. Put yourself through, go in like an incognito window or go in as a fake user that you created for yourself and try and put yourself through the motion of, I need to get this certification. Like, how quickly can I get to it? Or I use my husband all the time. Tell me, does this make sense to you? And I do that because he's not in the industry with me. He's very different and looks at things very differently than I do. And it's nice to have that perspective of someone who isn't as close to it as some of us are.
That's a very good piece. I think that's getting someone involved that has no context is always a great way to really check your work, right? Additionally, don't forget to check different formats as well. I feel like it's a given for us, right? We think definitely look at it on mobile, but look at it in all different ways that your learner from an accessibility perspective and from just a responsiveness perspective. If you're just building for desktop, some of your learners might be using a phone. Some of them might be using a tablet. So making sure that, especially when you're dealing with the visual aspect of your education program, that you're looking at it from different formats as well.
Yeah. And that was the case with Twitter Flight School. I think, I can't remember the exact percentage we had, but it's a pretty high percentage of mobile users. I would say, I don't want to say a number. I can't remember how high it was, but
it's a big one.
It's a big one.
It's about, I want to say about 50%.
Yeah.
That is really important. And if you're only addressing what it looks like on one format, then you're really missing half of your learners. So we actually have another question come in. What we've discussed various types of follow-up evaluation. What kind of upfront UX research or surveying do you recommend? It's similar to Sean's question above.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, again, it comes back to what your goals are. If you're talking about surveying your customers, your users, is that the right path to go down?
I think so. I think we're talking about like upfront research. Are you speaking, Jessica asked, are you speaking about from industry wide or are you speaking about specific to your customers? I think you always want to start with your customers, but.
So I'm going to answer both sides of where I think this question could be going. If you're talking about asking or researching for your customers and things like that, you also want to come back to those business goals again, of making sure you're asking the right questions that maybe aren't outright like, how many certifications have you achieved? But, allude to that goal and that business objective. Now, if you're talking about researching UX experiences to learn more about how to create a better one, get out of your work mode and look at just your life experiences. What if you're using Hulu or Netflix or any of those other apps? What about that user experience for you? Because like tying back, you're a learner yourself, you're a user yourself. What about those experiences do you really like? That continue watching is right up at the top, which is very similar to our continue learning, which we always put right at the top because we want users to be able to get right back into that content that they're obviously already invested in? Or is it serving up new movies and TV shows in the hero image and things like that? So I think as far as like researching good UX experiences, look to the apps you like to use in your everyday life. I think there's a lot to take away from that and that you can mirror in your own learning experience. And also that goes for things that you don't like, because there's something you're like, God, like I hate this being right there. Don't do that. Maybe don't put that in.
Best in class examples, specific important questions for learners up front. Exactly. You got Katie hit the nail on the head and Jessica received it. I love it. Perfect. So I don't want to keep you guys for the sake of keeping you. Nick, I just want to say thank you so much for joining and offering your insight. We can sit up here all day and say like, our customers are the greatest and Intellum is the best and we know all the things. But the reality is like, that's not true. We're constantly learning, we're constantly teaching, and that's the key to success in this industry. But having you come in and explain what your experience is like and what really helps, I think, other people understand what we're doing here and why.
Like, I love the way Twitter Flight School looks now. I'm very proud of that site, but I also like can't take full credit for it. It really, what I have always loved about our clients is that we really do operate as partners. It was working with Nick and his entire team to really get to this end result. And there was a lot of back and forth and there was a lot of challenging each other, because I think that's important. It's if you sit back and you're just like, this is what you want, here you go, and you don't actually think it through, then I think the quality is lost. I think it's that back and forth and that really vetting stuff out, being the devil's advocate sort of deal really helps you get to a much more refined, polished solution. And so I think I was very lucky to get to work with Nick and everybody on that team, and Angela and Burgess and Jim and the whole list of people. It's like an Academy Award speech. I can't remember. But if they're listening to this, I'm sorry, you were all fantastic.
Really, thank you for having me so much. And Katie, I can't tell you enough how much you helped us. We've been talking about this forever, and we never got to be able to do it on our own until we engaged your team. And you really got us in line and set us up with a roadmap and made it a lot more structured than we previously had it. So again, thank you. Appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun along the way.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just so grateful for all of you guys for attending today, giving us your attention, and for some your lunch hour, for some your morning, for some your evening. But I do want to let you know we'll be back next month. For July, we are talking about community and using community to support customer education. This is a really amazing topic, a really awesome way to approach really driving home the things that you're trying to get your learners to learn. So I hope that you'll join us. You can click the calendar icon in the top of your screen right now to find all future underscores and register there. The most important thing that I need from you now is to share your feedback in order for us to continue delivering awesome content, things that you actually want to learn. We have to drink our own juice and make this an iterative process. So please help me do that by sharing your feedback. I am dropping that link right here in the chat. It'll take like literally 3 minutes, but my name's Chi Johnson and I really appreciate you all joining us this afternoon. Katie is amazing. Follow her on LinkedIn, do all the things. I think that's enough. So for that, I will stop recording.